are just joining us, I'm Caitlin Van Horn. I'm the marketing manager from Simplecast. You may have gotten emails from me. I am real. I am really real. And I'm really excited to start this podcast or this webinar. I also, that cat I was warning you about before just jumped on the desk with me. So that's Dolly Parton. She might be making an appearance later. Yeah, and so we're going to talk about podcasting cross-show promotion, which is one of my favorite ways to help podcasters grow their audience. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by Ian Murphy, who works on the AudioGO team. As you may or may not know, Simplecast was recently bought by SiriusXM and Pandora. And one of the amazing things about that is that we get to work with the AdsWiz team, which Ian is part of. So when I heard about the AudioGO product that they offer, I was so excited because I was like, oh, we can use this to kind of automate cross-show promotion. Anyway, we will get into all of that later. Ian, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. So yeah, hey everybody, nice to meet you here. Thanks for coming today. My name's Ian, of course, reaching out from AdsWiz, which is the company behind the platform called AudioGO. And so I'm really excited to show you the platform. We work with a lot of podcasters doing cross promotion using AudioGO. It's a very affordable and easy way to reach listeners on other streaming services. So yeah, definitely excited to show you how this all works and how we can utilize it for cross promotion. Thanks for having me, Caitlin.
Yeah. So what I figured we would do, and the way this is kind of going to work, is that I'm going to give a quick rundown on cross-show promotion and best practices, what it is, how to do it, why to do it, who are your best bets for shows to cross-promote with. And then I can kick it over to Ian, and he will give you a rundown of AudioGO and how that can actually help you automate the process, because while I love cross-show promotion, it is one of those things that takes a lot of resources. Give me just 1 second. There we go. I think that might be it for the cat webinar bombings. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen for a quick presentation. If you want a copy of this, just let me know. I'm happy to email it to you. My email is just Caitlin, Caitlin, at simplecast.com. And if you have any questions about this, let me know. So I think you should be able to see the screen now. Can someone in the chat let me know if you can or if you can't? It looks like it's good to me.
Me too.
Okay, cool. I think we're good then. All right, yeah, so a little bit about me. I know awesome, thank you, Leslie. I know we talked about it a little bit before. I'm marketing manager at Simplecast. Most of what my job is finding new customers for Simplecast, so podcasters like yourselves. But my background is also in audience development. I've worked with a lot of media brands and helped them find new audiences. So because of that, I get to help a lot of podcasters out with how to make their audiences grow. So that's sort of where I'm coming from with regards to this presentation. So yeah, let's start with the basics. What is cross-show promotion? It's really simple. It's when you, now I'm noticing the typo in my slides, great. Cross-show promotion is just when you advertise your podcast on another podcast. And why would you want to do that? Well, cross-show promotion is one of the best and most effective ways to grow your podcast audience. When I have podcasters that reach out to me and say, like, Caitlin, like, what's a good starter pack for how to grow my show? I'm like, okay, well, one of the things that you should really try, if you can, is to promote your show on other people's podcasts. And it's because it gets rid of the two biggest hurdles in growing your audience. So the biggest hurdle in acquiring new podcast listeners is that if you're hitting an audience that doesn't listen to podcasts, you have to teach them that. So you kind of have to like bring the horse to water and then you have to make it drink. And so it's two actions. And then the biggest hurdle in advertising in general is getting people to do what you want. So a lot of times I see podcasters and they start with, they want to run like Google ads or Facebook ads. Don't get me wrong. I'm a marketing professional. I love Google ads. I love Facebook ads. The targeting is excellent. However, if you have someone who is on their desktop on Facebook, there's a lot of friction when they see your ad to click into that ad, see the show, then figure out how to find the show on their phone. And if they're not already a podcast listener, like, I don't know, the chances of getting them to actually go to your show's website, then find the show on their app of choice, then maybe teach themselves how to listen, it's a lot. So when you promote your show on another podcast, you know that they already listen to podcasts, and you don't have to teach them how to do that, which is great. Plus, the other thing that I think is important is that when people think about cross-show promotion, a lot of times they will be like, well, aren't I just giving my audience up to my competitors? And no, you're not. The amazing thing about podcast consumers is that they're kind of like craft beer consumers, where they're not necessarily brand loyal. They listen to a lot of different shows. Most people who, this came out in the Edison Infinite Dial research, if you're interested in looking it up, but most people who listen to podcasts listen to way more than one podcast. So it's not as though you're stealing audiences or someone is stealing your audience from you. So that's kind of the why around cross-show promotion. So let's move on to what does it look like? So there are three main models, and chances are you've probably heard one or two or all three. And also the caveat here and that asterisk is to note that podcasting is a new and exciting and constantly changing industry and atmosphere. So, you know, these are not set in stone. They might change. There might be something that's a hybrid model of like A and B, or a hybrid model of B and C. So this is just sort of like broad strokes of what cross-show promotion can look like. So the main one is a promo swap. And what this looks like is when you are listening to a show that you're subscribed to, you hear in like a pre-roll, so that's the ad at the beginning of the show, a mid-roll, that's an ad in the middle, or a post-roll, that's the ad at the end, a promotional soundbite for a podcast. Now, this can be a host-read ad, so it can be read by the podcast that you are listening to, or it can be read by the person who created the podcast or something in between. So that's a promo swap. I think that's the majority of the host-read ads, or that's the majority of the cross-show promotion spots that you will hear. One of the other ways that this can sort of manifest is in an episode swap. So an episode swap is when a full episode is put into the feed of another show. And a lot of times you'll see this. I listen to a lot of fiction podcasts. So if there is a season break or a hiatus, or if the podcast is a limited run series and it just ends, you might see that that's when episode swaps start to show up. It's a natural time for people to keep their feed updated. Listeners will be really excited because they'll see that, oh, there's a new episode of something. And so they'll go to look at it, and it's a promotional slot for another podcast. Now, of course, the thing to bear in mind with an episode swap is that you should really, really make sure that your audience you should vet these if you're going to try and place one, or if you're going to accept one. I would really make sure with an episode swap that it is something that you truly think your audience will be really interested in. And also, one of the ways you can kind of ease that friction is by including like a pre-roll top of show intro into the episode swap, saying like, hi, welcome listeners. This is, the creator and director of this podcast that you're used to listening to. I was approached by the creators of this other podcast. I love their show. I think you'll love it too. So give it a listen. And that can kind of help ease the friction, but it's also a great way, especially if you have a really high degree of listener trust. It's an amazing way to intro new creators to your audience. And then the third way, and this is kind of a hybrid of 1 and 2, is something that looks a lot more like a sponsorship model. So a show that wants to do a promotional swap might sponsor a whole season of another show and run, pre-roll or mid-roll ads saying that they are like sponsoring that show and where you can find their own show. So those are the three main models. And I also just want to flag that if you have questions, I know we went through that kind of fast. I'm a fast talker. You can always drop them in the chat and I will get to them. So does cross-show promotion cost money? Well, unfortunately, there's not a satisfying answer there. It depends. It especially depends on what the audiences look like. So if you have sort of audience parity, like one show's getting 30,000 downloads a month and the other show's getting 30,000 downloads a month, a promo swap might not cost you any money. But if you're going after a big show or a show that's been around or a show that has like an advertising sales department, it's entirely possible that you might be charged to do this. And that's okay, it's advertising. But you won't know until you ask. So how do you find shows to cross promote? And this is where I think you'll find a lot of your time gets spent. Because I won't lie to you, like this is kind of a research, in order for this to work well, it's kind of a research intensive process. And that's why when podcasters come to me and they're like, hey, Lynn, what should I do to grow my show? And they're like, well, right now I have an alert on Twitter so that when people are asking for podcast recommendations, I can go in there and recommend my podcast. I'm like, okay, why don't you try doing this instead? So the first thing that you should do is research. You should find shows that look like viable cross-promotion targets. And in a few slides, I will get to who those are. The most important thing is that you should listen to those target shows and you should read press coverage of those target shows. And that's not only so that you know that they're a fit for your audience, but it's also so that when you reach out to them, you can say something really personal. Because I'm sure you guys know this, but podcasters get so much email. So it's worth making sure that it's a really personable and personal one. And then reach out. Most of the time you should be able to find the email on the show's website. I would say be careful about doing like a Twitter DM or an Instagram DM just because they're kind of a less professional platform. And you are coming to this from a business perspective. So I would say email. If you really can't find an email and the show is like your perfect match, I think it's fine to send a Twitter DM and be like, hey, I'd love to talk to you about some cross-show promotion. Is there a business email that I can reach out to? That's probably the best way to do it. And be personal. You know, there's a lot of weird spammy, like I said, there's a lot of weird spammy automated emails that podcasters get. You don't want to be one of those. And remember all that listening that you did before and the press coverage that you read, mention those. So here's a sample email that you can do. And I just did this if I had a podcast, which I don't. So subject line, hi from XYZ podcast, cross show promotion. And it's, hi X, my name is Caitlin Van Horn, and I'm the creator and host of XYZ podcast. We're a show covering X, Y, and Z. I came across your show, the ABC show, after reading about it in Vulture's Best Kids podcast of 29. And I really enjoyed the episode where you talk about A, B, and C. I think there might be some potential overlap in our audience, and I'd love to talk about cross-promoting our shows on each other's feeds. If that sounds interesting to you, please let me know. Best, Caitlin Van Horn. If that sounds like a cover letter, it's because it kind of is. And also, if you just want to take a screenshot and save that text for when you do this, go right ahead. So after you, did I skip a slide? No. So after you reach out, once you start talking to them, please draw up a contract. Please, 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 please draw up a contract. If you are sort of home brewing these business partnerships, you need to make sure that you have, you know, a liability release, a waiver, that you have something in writing that says it is absolutely okay for a full episode of this podcast to show up on my feed. There are a lot of copyright disputes. Podcasts are they're intellectual property that can sometimes get passed around between different companies and different creators. So say you did a full episode swap with someone 2 or 3 years ago, their podcast has since gotten acquired, and that new acquiring company is trying to sue you for a copyright breach because you have a full episode of their show on your feed. It is so important that you have a contract that says, no, I agreed this, I have an agreement and this was okay. So that you are covered. Additionally, you know, good fences make good neighbors and good contracts make good business partners. If you both agree that you are going to promote each other's shows and promo swaps for the next 5 weeks, it's really important to have that in writing so that, you know, if your partner is not holding up their end of the deal, you can point to it and say, hey, this is what we agreed on. please draw up a contract. If you need a sample contract, we have a lot of them on the Simplecast blog, but you can also, again, just email me. It's Caitlin, Caitlin, at simplecast.com. So bear in mind, yes, this approach does. Do I have samples? Joe, yes, I do. I have samples of contracts. We have like vendor agreements, which you can modify to work with this. Just shoot me an email and I will send them over to you. So yeah, bear in mind, this approach takes a bit of time and can be labor and research intensive, but it yields great results. And if you want a faster way to do promo swaps, we will talk about that with AudioGO. So really important, who is a good cross-promotion partner? And there are sort of two big fields that you should examine when you're trying to find this. So content and audience. We'll start with content. So thinking about genre, if you have a true crime show and you're looking for places to do episode swaps, another true crime show is a pretty natural partner. Content, so not necessarily the genre, but what you're really drilling into in that show. So You're Wrong About is a podcast that talks about how like media kind of changes how we remember certain events, like Disco Demolition Night or or certain elections. And NPR's Throughline is a show that examines historical events and how the media has shaped how we perceive them. So they're not necessarily about the same thing, but they kind of take the same tack in approaching it. So they could be wonderful cross-show partners. Tone. So if you are, for instance, a kind of jokey, irreverent true crime podcast, it might not make sense to do some cross-show promotion with a show that takes a really serious, thoughtful, investigative eye towards true crime. You might be better off looking at something called like a show like Coroner Chat, which is exactly what it sounds like. And it's kind of a jokey but informative look at what coroners do day to day. The other thing that you can look at is creators. So 0 Hours is an anthology fiction podcast. And lots of the writers and the actors for 0 Hours are writers and actors for Outliers. So it makes sense for those shows to do some promotional swaps, because if the audience is interested in the work of one of the writers or creators, they might be interested in it doing another show. And then lastly, format. So if you have a chat cast, it makes sense to go look at other chat casts. So I think content is sometimes where a lot of people stop when it comes to cross promotion. And I would really encourage them to, Eric, yes, there will. You can actually use, Eric says, will an archive of this video be accessible to us? And yes, it will. The RSVP link that you use to RSVP and find this show will have a replay. So just bookmark the link. So audience. You don't need to think about what your show is about, but you also you should think about what your show is about, but you should also think about who is listening. So who is your audience? What do they like? Where do they live? And what do they do? You should know these things. And you can find them using the analytics that you get from your hosting provider. You can find them based on if you have like a social media group. And if you want to do some reading or some listener feedback, you can also get it that way. But in thinking about that, it opens up a lot more doors. So for instance, if you run a podcast about craft beer, and you know that your audience really likes craft beer, if you think about them as a whole person, then it opens up a lot more options. So you can say like, okay, well, not only will I look at other craft beer podcasts, but they're interested in food and some of them are interested in home brewing. So maybe it makes sense to do some cross-show promotion on a sourdough bread baking podcast. Or if you know that they all live in a certain area, maybe it makes sense to do a Bend, Oregon food tour podcast. So knowing your audience gives you another layer of insight into where you can do cross-promotion. Is that all clear? Just drop questions in the chat if it's not. So how do you measure success? So unique listeners are one of the really nice, strong ways to do that. So in Simplecast, you have the ability to see who your new unique listeners are. And if you're seeing an increase over your expected week over week or month over month increase in unique listeners, and you're not running a ton of other marketing initiatives, you can pretty well chalk those up to new listeners coming from your episode, from your promotional swaps. You can also ask your audience, did you listen to any of the shows we promoted? If you do like an end of year audience survey, which I really suggest you do, that's an excellent time to ask those questions and find that out. And then that's also great feedback to give back to your partners. And then social media mentions. If you see someone who's like, oh, I love listening to Talking Sopranos, and now I also listen to this other show that they promoted, like, again, wonderful feedback. And I think the last and most important thing is to assess, like, how did you feel about the cross-show promotion or the episode swap or whatever, however you ended up doing it. Did it feel really stressful? Does it feel like the juice was worth the squeeze? Like, do you think your audience was annoyed by it? Did it take way too long to set up? And those are important because podcasting takes a lot of time. I know a lot of people are doing it with really small teams. So it's worth, assessing how it performed, and then also if you will be able to replicate that performance without, burning yourself out. So, questions. That is a really quick rundown of some of my best practices and tips on how to do cross-show promotion. But if you have any questions about it, drop them in the chat. Or if you, are watching a replay later and you're like, this is really confusing, just shoot me an email. It's Caitlin@Simplecast. And I think now might be a good time to kick it over to Ian to talk about AudioGO and how AudioGO can kind of speed up the cross-show promotion process. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. There we go.
All right, thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah.
That was great.
Really sped through it, but yeah.
No, it's perfect. And it's very, very informative. I feel like I should start my own podcast because now I know how to cross promote.
Great.
Cool. Well, again, thanks everyone for coming here. And so, whoops, what happened here? Perfect. So hopefully everyone can see my screen at this point.
Yes.
Perfect. So I know we're talking about cross promotion, and Caitlin mentioned AudioGO and how it can help automate that. So what I wanted to do is kind of take a look at just the digital audio landscape in general and talk a little bit about digital audio advertising real briefly. And then I'll show you some specific examples of how we can use digital audio in 2020, some best practices. Then I'll kind of cover what is AudioGO. And then I'll show you some podcast and business examples from some people who actually have used the platform and seen some success on it. Then I'll do actually a quick platform demo itself. I'll show you the platform. It's really, really straightforward. And yes, I am going to try to squeeze all that into about 30 minutes. So just to go from very high level, when we think about digital audio, what is digital audio? There's actually a lot of different forms. The most common one people think of is streaming. For example, Pandora, iHeart, Spotify. You also have your online digital radio shows on platforms like iHeart, even some local news stations. Of course, we're all familiar here with podcasts and really how much that's grown over the last few years. And really the appetite for podcasts is, more than ever. And then, of course, we also have ways that people can listen to digital audio on smart speakers, digital assistants in their connected cars. And so at the end of the day, because of all this and because of how digital audio works, it's very personalized, right? It can be very, very targeted. What I like to mention is traditional radio, while there's nothing wrong with it as an advertising medium, it's really a one-to-many broadcast, right? Where it's one broadcast going out to a multitude of listeners, and we might not know exactly who's on the other end of the broadcast. Sure, we might have some Nielsen data that says who the listeners typically are, but we might not know who it is on the other end. With digital audio, it's just like digital display. It's one-to-one messaging. We could say we want to reach females age 25 to 35 in these zip codes near Salt Lake City who are listening to true crime podcasts. So it's very, very targeted, very personalized. And of course, since it's digital, it's very measurable. And I'll show you that in a moment as well. So when we think about digital audio, people are really starting to spend really more time with this than social media. I think on average, Americans are spending 4.5 hours now a day with streaming audio. And when you think about kind of the typical journey of someone going through their day, it kind of makes sense, right? Someone, you wake up, you snooze the alarm, maybe then you click onto your Alexa to get some news for the morning and, listen to some of your favorite music while you get ready. Maybe you're downstairs, taking out another streaming app, listening to some more music, once you get in the car, maybe you're listening to a podcast that you like, that sort of thing. And but before lunchtime, listeners are hearing about 2 hours worth of digital audio and streaming content pretty much on a daily basis. So it's all around us. Digital audio is pervasive. It's everywhere. And that's what really makes it effective and why it's becoming a growing medium to kind of reach consumers. And so just a couple stats here. I know I mentioned one, but there's 190 million people who listen to digital audio at least once a month. 4.5 hours on average is the amount of time that Americans spend streaming digital audio today. And that number's probably gone up. And then the last thing is, is it effective? And Nielsen actually did a study where they looked at using audio advertising versus traditional display advertising. And they actually found that when folks heard an audio ad, they actually had a 24% increase in brand recall. And I think it makes sense because we're, quite literally in their ears. And it's also because we're advertising on content that these people trust, whether it's podcasts, whether it's streaming music. I think all of us can agree we turn to this medium to get content that we trust and enjoy. And that's becoming even more so during this kind of new normal. And so wanted to kind of touch on what is happening with digital audio kind of in this new normal that we live in. And Nielsen did a great study right when the kind of pandemic broke out. And they found that, a vast majority, 83% of consumers say they're listening to as much or more radio and digital audio as they did before. And really a majority of listeners mentioned that they trust this medium to give them timely and accurate information regarding COVID. And then 42% of consumers said that the radio and audio has really helped them deal with the current crisis. And so it makes sense. It's a medium that people turn to. They trust what they're listening to. And if we reach them with the right message at the right time, I think it makes it very, very effective as an advertising medium. So the great thing about digital audio, it's very, very personal, as I mentioned. It's very immersive. We're kind of catching these listeners at really key and important moments during their day when they're listening to the content that they trust. We have their undivided attention. Again, I said it before, but we're literally in their ears. And then the good thing here as well is you can be very precise about your targeting, which makes it really great for hyper-local advertising as well as reaching listeners across the US. You have a lot of different options there. And then because it's digital, it's very transparent and very measurable. So I'll breeze through these. These are kind of some best practices. Of course, it's great that we understand that digital audio is kind of this growing opportunity. People are listening to podcasts or listening to smart speakers. It's an easy way to measure your advertising and to get started with it. But they do have some slight different best practices than traditional advertising. There's obviously some overlap, but one of the biggest things is first and foremost, you want to really define your goal. And with audio in general, there's kind of a couple different ways you can do that. You could go for a purely reach campaign that says, hey, I want to reach as many unique individuals as I can. Even if they only hear the ad once, maybe twice, I just want to reach as many unique individuals. Or more of an awareness goal where you say, hey, I want to reach a very specific group of listeners and really drive awareness there and have them hear our ad multiple different times. So there's kind of a few different approaches there, but the very top level, you want to make sure to define your goal. And then next, kind of to Caitlin's point earlier about your audience, not only is it important to understand your audience, but then you want to make sure to target the right listeners for your cross promotion and for your advertising. And then we want to have a very unique, specific call to action. In this case, asking people to download the podcast where they get their podcasts, have some unique information in there. You'd be surprised how many ads we hear where people mention, hey, I'm Joe the plumber. I'd love to work with you, but they don't actually tell them how to work with them, right? So make sure to have that call to action in there. And then lastly, because it is digital, we can track the performance. So you'll be able to see how many ads are delivered for you, unique listeners reached, the type of content that your ads and listeners are finding you on, and so on and so forth. So with one-to-one targeting, really allows you to create these personalized experiences in moments that matter to these listeners. So that's all great, But as a local advertiser, you really could not buy audio advertising on premium digital radio or premium streaming services or really on other podcasts without large minimum spends. And that's really something that's changed with this platform. So AudioGO allows you to easily and affordably advertise across premium services like Pandora, iHeart, TuneIn. We recently started working with Stitcher as well to extend the reach on podcasts. All of that with just only a $250 minimum spend. So no monthly requirements, no subscriptions, no contracts, anything like that. And then we're also able to help you create a professional audio ad. Now, I know a lot of podcast hosts, when we work with them, want to have their voice in the ad, which is absolutely fine, no problem. We could help you with that. But we can also help you with professionally stitching the background track into that as well. So we can definitely help you there, and it's very, very low cost to do any of that. It's only $10 to produce that professional audio ad. We also have really great targeting. So you can target by age group, gender. You have a lot of options for the location. You can get down to the zip code, or you can go as wide as the state level and everything in between. You can choose the time of day that the ads run. You can target English or Spanish listeners, as well, of course, as music genre and content type. And you'll see how I have it set up in a moment. But with podcasts, we have it all broken out by category for you to reach the right category and the right audience there. Really easy to get things set up. You could be up and running in a matter of minutes here. And then you also get your real-time dashboard that gives you progress to show you, again, how many uniques you've reached, how many ads have been delivered. It's got some conversion metrics in there. And then we have some additional features as well. We're constantly trying to make new features and make the product better. And so we give you real insights into the available inventory. When you're building out a campaign, you'll know how many listeners you're likely going to reach and how many ads will go out. We've made it easier to duplicate campaigns, save campaigns as drafts. Really, you're not locked into anything at AudioGO. You can pause at any time, and much more. And so that's the great thing about AudioGO. Really makes it easy and accessible to use digital audio advertising, where typically you'd have to pick up the phone, call someone like Pandora, work out the details, and really, unless you had $5,000 to spend, they're really not interested. So really opens it up, gives you access. And we had a great quote from one of our customers here that said this was the first time that they had friends and family texting them that they had heard or seen the ad. The exposure was great. The clearly displayed data from our campaign helped guide them for future campaigns, and that this sort of advertising really gets you the best bang for your buck. So great to hear that. So next
Ian,
one I want
quick question from the audience. Is AudioGO currently available outside the United States?
Good question. So as of today, no, it's just in the United States, but that's something that we're expanding very soon. We believe early next year we should be potentially available in Canada as well as parts of the UK, but we're still working out the details. But yeah, as of today, it's US only.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I'm looking at my full screen, so if any questions do come up, please let me know, Caitlin. Appreciate that. So next one I wanted to show you was one example of a podcast that we're working with. We work with a variety of podcasts, but this was one that first I thought the content was kind of interesting. But this is someone who basically wanted to, their name's Boga Hunting, and they wanted to expand their current reach. They have a podcast all about bow hunting. They feature other bow hunting groups, companies that provide, gear and all that good stuff. And so they wanted to reach different kind of local areas across the U.S. where their listenership wasn't as high, but they felt was a good match in terms of their content. And so they also wanted an outlet that would complement their other efforts, the other digital advertising that they're doing, and audio is a great way to do that. And so the results was they used AudioGO to effectively reach various hunting communities, and they've used it multiple times to do that. And they've really focused their targeting on location, age, as well as on genre. And so I'll show you again how you can pull those different levers, but wanted to also play their ad for us here to give us an example.
Hey everybody, this is James from the Boga Hunting Podcast, and I have 3 very important questions for you. Number 1, are you a bow hunter? Number 2, do you like podcasts? And number 3, are you real cool? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you need to check out the Boga Hunting Podcast. We talk with bow hunting industry leaders every week, swapping manly stories and sharing a few hunting tactics. So check out the Boga Hunting Podcast on whatever platform you use to listen to your podcasts.
Awesome. So great ad there. They have some really good information, and I thought they also had that call to action at the end to make sure to tell people to download. So just wanted to show you one example of a podcast that we work with, and by all means, I'll share my email after this. Feel free to connect with me. I could send you additional examples of other podcasts and all other kinds of information. So please do feel free to reach out. Then the next example I want to show, it's not a podcast, but this is an example where a cosmetology school, a Paul Mitchell branded school, and they act like local independent kind of smaller cosmetology schools. What they did was they linked up with an advertising agency to track this. So they said, okay, we want to try this platform. We want to see how it works, but we really want to track the success. And so what they did was they were promoting a new tuition grant to increase student enrollment. And one thing they did a great job of was they created a unique landing page to track conversions, which really helped them. And they worked with the agency on that. And then they also ran a $6,000 campaign for 30 days. So it was a sizable campaign. But what they saw, the results, they can directly attribute all this to AudioGO. There's no other outside sources. And so they had 147 new website visitors just from AudioGO. And then they actually had 3 new students enroll. And while 3 might not sound like a lot, in this particular case, to actually have them enroll, the tuition is $17,000 per student. So they saw a very, very strong ROI directly from AudioGO. So not only was it just a good example to share of some success and how digital audio can work very well, but they also have a really good example of an advertisement. So just take a listen here, and then we'll move forward.
You love empowering others to embrace their unique style. Now, how do you turn your creativity into a dream career? Enroll now in the cosmetology program at Paul Mitchell, the school located in Logan, Ogden, Salt Lake City, and Provo. We are offering $1 million in scholarships, and financial aid is available to those who qualify. So don't miss this incredible opportunity to start your new career. Learn more by going to paulmitchell.edu/Pandora.
Great. So really good example there. They had a enticing offer about some scholarships, and then they had a very clear call to action at the end, and a unique landing page to help them track. So just a good example of someone using the platform well and really seeing great results. So now real quickly, I'll actually want to show you the platform itself. So I'm going to actually hop over to here. All right. So this is the platform AudioGO. And so as I mentioned, it makes it really easy to get started with advertising, and particularly for podcasts. The great thing here is in terms of cross promotion, we can target podcast type content and podcast directly, which will allow you to get on the same type of shows. And then you could do so without having to leave the website. You can choose the age range, all that. So I'll show you all the details here. So it's real straightforward. And also forgot to mention, and I'll mention at the end here, but we are offering everyone who registered for the event and who attended the call here some free advertising dollars. So we're offering $100 in free advertising, which is I believe about 6,000 audio ads, just about maybe a bit more even that go out for you. So really good value. Definitely take advantage of that. And we'll make sure to remind you about that. But so yeah, this is the platform. Really easy to get started. Please.
Quick question from the audience, from Paul, and this might be something that we can do at the end or send by email in the follow-up, but do you have metrics on a smaller campaign spend with a lower audience engagement cost?
Yeah, good question. So we absolutely have folks who have run smaller campaigns who have seen success, and maybe when you see the reporting, this might answer your question, but yeah, you'll absolutely be able to see kind of with smaller campaigns what you can expect to reach, how many listeners, and you'll be clued in all the way through. So I know that last example was a larger campaign, but I'd be happy to talk with you offline to talk through some other examples and what you can expect for a lower campaign spend. Cool. So jumping back into this here, because I know I definitely want to leave some time for questions at the end. So typical sign up process: first name, last name, email, password, all that great stuff. And then once you do that, of course, I'm an administrator of the site, so it'll know me if I try to log in. But once you do that, then it'll take you to your dashboard. So this is the first thing you see when you'll log in, and it'll be empty. It'll say something to the effect of, start your first campaign here. And so first and foremost is in the top right. These are the two links really to get started. If you need help producing an ad, which we can absolutely do, you just click this Request Audio Ad tab, which will take you here. And as you can see, it's only $10. So we've partnered with a professional voiceover group. They do ads for large podcasts, for the big brands of Coca-Cola's of the world. So it's very professionally done. It's not me in my basement with a microphone or anything like that. It's professionals doing this, and it's studio recorded. And with AudioGO, the spots are 30 seconds in length. And so all we ask that you do is you fill out a script here, and we have all the tools and resources to help you. And I can send you example podcast ads so you can get a really good idea of what to do for the script. We do ask that it's 70 words total so that it fits within that 30-second slot. You can target by language on AudioGO, so we also wanted to be able to help you create the ads in English or Spanish, so we can do that as well. Next, you'll see we have two different options for voice type. So 2 options for male, 2 options for female. And then you'll be able to see the background track. And so with the background tracks, we have a variety of options. And the good thing is you can click into it here, click this play button, and you'll get a preview of what the song's going to sound like. We also have the option for no music. I know that's sometimes a popular choice for our podcast advertisers. Entirely up to you. Just want to make sure that it matches the message that you have and matches the audience you're targeting. So just kind of think through that while you're building out the ad here. And then lastly, any instructions you have for the voice actor. So if there's a certain pronunciation, if there's a certain energy or tone that you want to have, please be upbeat and excited, or be serious and professional. Just leave those notes in here. We'll pass that along to the voice actor. And then once you hit submit, this will go to our team. Usually it takes about 48 hours. Recently it's been less for them to complete the ad, and then we'll send that back to you via email for you to review it. If you like it, great. Let's go ahead and go back to the dashboard and get things set up. If not, if there's something off with it, please do let us know. We do offer 1 free revision, and we're very flexible. So we definitely want to make sure that the ad sounds right for you. Most of our customers are pretty happy on the first go around, but do want to make sure that you are aware that you do get a free revision. So please do use it if there's something off. Once you have your ad, it sounds great, you're excited to advertise on some other podcasts. Next, what you're going to want to do is click this Create New Campaign button. So once you do that, that'll take you here, kind of another form. And so disregard this top line. That since I'm an administrator of the site, the first thing you'll see is campaign name. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in the campaign name. Here's where you enter in your budget. As mentioned, the only minimum spend requirement we have is a $250 minimum. For the sake of example, I'm just going to enter in $500. With AudioGO, you also decide how long your campaign runs. It could be a day, a week, a month, 2 months, entirely up to you. Again, for example, I'm just going to have it run for a week. And you'll notice right when you enter in your budget and your campaign start and stop dates, our audience guide is going to show up. And so this, I know it doesn't directly answer that previous question, but this might help. This gives you a really good idea of what you can expect. And so, for example, here for the $500, we're estimating 27,800 of those 30-second audio ads to go out. And below here, the estimated unique listeners reached. This is the number of unique individuals that are actually going to hear the ad. So right now, we haven't set any targeting. It's looking at the entire United States. This is more along the lines of one of those reach campaigns I mentioned, where you want these numbers to be somewhat even, and we're really optimizing the budget to reach just the larger number of individuals for the sake of reaching more individuals rather than a more targeted awareness campaign. The good thing here is you'll also see this message. So it'll let you know, hey, your audience selection is fairly broad. We recommend either increasing your budget or narrowing down your audience. So there's always some helpful hints here. And feel free to, after this, make a free account on AudioGO. Just play around with this. You can see, oh, hey, in this general area, in this type of podcast, there's this much inventory available, that kind of thing. And this will just always help you understand where you're at, basically.
Ian, I've got another question
Please.
from the audience. So just to clarify, minimum spend would have to be $250?
Correct. So the way that it works out, and I know I work for the company, so should I say this? I don't know, but it's the $250 spend minimum. And the great thing about AudioGO, and I'll show you in a moment, is you're really not locked into anything. So let's say you start your campaign, it's that $250 minimum, and let's say $100 goes by, $200 go. I really wouldn't recommend turning things off after, let's say, just $50. But let's say after $100, $200, you feel like it's not working, you can pause your campaign, and we typically recommend pausing, changing some things out, and starting it back up. But in all transparency, you can technically pause it indefinitely. So you're really not locked into anything here. But we do have that minimum because that's where we feel like you'll at least have enough data to make an informed decision on if this is something that's working for you or not.
Yeah. And while we're asking questions, is there training to help the buyer with conversion best practices, best landing pages, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have like a walkthrough video that touches on some of that, but typically how we handle that is actually on a case-by-case basis because as you know with podcasts, everyone's needs are different and that sort of thing. So what I'd happily offer my time where we can sit down together on a quick call and talk through it and make sure that everything's set up correctly or we're doing as best we can there. So yeah, short answer there is I'll basically give Caitlin a link to my calendar to share with you all.
Great.
Do that.
Awesome.
Cool. And of course, yeah, please keep letting me know if there's questions, Caitlin. I appreciate that. I can't see the chat box, so I'm flying blind. So yeah, jumping back to this. So after you've set your campaign budget, set your schedule, you'll see the audience guide populate. We do allow you to do day parting, so you can select the day and time of the week that the ad runs. I know we don't have as many examples of this today, but let's say rush hour traffic, that's the best one. People aren't doing it as much today, but if you wanted to reach people during rush hour traffic and you maybe want to build some messaging out around that, you can actually just highlight out those times, and our audience guide will also update. So we normally don't recommend using it unless you have a very time-sensitive need, because as you can see in a moment, we have targeting to reach the audience in different ways. This second box here is where you drag and drop your audio ad. So once that's that finished recording, whether we've created or you, just drag and drop it in here. We do also allow you to include display banners. This comes at no additional cost, doesn't count towards your impressions or budget, anything like that. It just does provide the opportunity for a display ad to show when the listener's hearing the ad, which will allow them to tap or click to learn more, and we can send them to a destination URL of your choosing. So definitely recommend that. Lastly, and most importantly, of course, is how to reach your audience. So we can reach our audience by location, gender, age group, as well as content type. And so the way that it works out, particularly with location, you could start typing in a zip code and that'll show up, and you can choose a multitude of zip codes. Or you can type something in like Los Angeles and it'll show you all the relevant options. The city of Los Angeles, the county, the greater marketing areas. So just make the selection that works best for you, and you can combine cities with zip codes, counties, a variety of options there. So for the sake of example, again, I'm just going to choose the city of Los Angeles. And we do allow you to target listeners by gender and by age group. So please do make those selections if they're relevant. Let's say you want to target both male and female. Just click this and that'll run across all that content. In terms of content type, which is really music genres, and then what we call talk and podcast, which is where we house our podcast. Under music, we have about 19 core music genres here. And we actually work with a lot of podcasters who like to include music in some of their targeting to kind of reach folks that are streaming, because even though they might not be listening to podcasts, that is where they're normally streaming. It's likely where they get their podcast, and it will be also a very timely message. So of course we can talk about that on a one-on-one basis, but did want to just point that out. Of course, what's probably most important to everyone here is this section, the talking podcasts. And so the way that we have it broken out, and again with AudioGO, as Caitlin mentioned, it's kind of more automated and it's affordable with low barriers to entry. So we've broken it out all by categories. So that's how we're able to target in terms of podcasts. And so let's say we have maybe a business or a tech type podcast, and we want people to hear it. You can go ahead and select the relevant categories. Let's say, for example, business, maybe news, maybe technology as just an example. And anytime you make these selections, the audience guide will populate. Okay, great. So now you can see this kind of blue message that says, hey, your selection is good. And the reason it's saying that is because we've really optimized this for more of those awareness type campaigns. Generally speaking, we think it's best when the listener hears the ad multiple times to kind of increase that brand recall. And now you can see in this case, we have about 8,500 listeners, still have that 27,800 number of ads that will go out. So they're all hearing the ad about 3 or 4 different times. So do keep an eye on this. This will also tell you if you make too narrow of a selection, if there's not enough inventory. So it's really helpful when you're building out your campaigns. If everything looks good, all you need to do here is schedule campaign. Let's say you don't have the audio ad ready, but you're playing around with the targeting and you find a really good spot. No problem. Just save it as a campaign draft so you can revisit it later. I know we're a bit short on time, but the last thing I wanted to show you is the dashboard. So this is the reporting that you'll get. So at a high level, you're able to see how much of your budget has been spent, how much time is left on the campaign. You'll be able to see how many ads have been delivered, unique listeners reached, and a couple conversion metrics. We can track the listen through rate, which is how many people hear the ad all the way through. It's typically pretty high for free listeners. They can't usually skip the ad, which is great for the advertiser. And then, of course, we can track the click-through rate and the clicks. And if you click on the campaign itself, you get to really dive into some more granular information. You can see your impressions on a daily basis. Same goes for listeners and clicks. And another great thing here is you can actually see the distribution of your impressions by content type. So this can be particularly helpful. Let's say in our past example, when I chose business, news, and technology, I can come back here and maybe I see that business is far and away where most of my ads are going and where most of my listeners are coming from. Maybe next time what I'll do is I'll gear it a bit more towards business, maybe up the budget, and have my messaging really focused around that type of content. You can export all of this at any time. And then as I mentioned previously, you're not locked into anything here. You can pause and start campaigns as you need them. You can always change out display creative or your targeting or anything like that and export this information whenever you need it. So that's pretty much the platform, and I'll just quickly finish up here.
Quick question from the audience, from Derek. He says, we've seen that an overwhelming majority of our subscribers come from Apple Music. Does AudioGO also integrate ads on Apple?
Good question. So as of today, we don't integrate ads within Apple Music. It's something where conversations are happening at a high level with a lot of these other platforms, maybe a bit above my pay grade. But yeah, short answer there is as of today, we don't have Apple Music included.
But I think the thing to note, Derek, is that that means that there's white space. If you know that a lot of your audience already lives on one platform, it's worth exploring something that's kind of analogous on another platform. So if they're all coming from Apple Music, it might be worthwhile to explore like Pandora and actually placing ads on other music platforms that you're not currently reaching. Because they're kind of similar enough that it's worth exploring. Does that make sense?
It's a great point. Great point there. Yeah, absolutely. And Pandora really is they're the largest publisher in terms of free ad-based listeners, which is why AudioGO really has a lot of reach and a lot of inventory. And to your point there, Caitlin, yeah, there's absolutely a lot of relevant listeners on these other platforms. And that's why we allow you to kind of target things by category, by genre and age to make sure it's the right listener on the other end. So yeah, thanks for taking a look at the platform. From here, it's super easy to get started. You can make your free account at audiogo.com. And I think, Caitlin, I know you mentioned this deck, I think will go out to everyone. So you can always reference this here. And then as I mentioned, you do get $100 off your first campaign with us just because you attended the webinar. So Yay. Love to take advantage of that. And outside of that, here's my email. It's ian.murphy@audiogo.com. But please do reach out. Love to talk with you and really strategize on how you could use the platform for cross promotion. But yeah, Caitlin, that's everything from my end.
Awesome. Looks like Andy has one more question, which is, will these ads play on my podcast? And the answer is, Andy, you would mostly be placing ads for your podcast on other podcasts. So these ads wouldn't play on your show. They would play for your show, if that's clear. And Joe, yes, I believe we'll either send out a code for the discount or we will automatically put your email addresses we will attach the codes to your email addresses. Let me know which one makes sense, Ian.
Yeah, exactly. We'll send it out just so you have it. But if you do want to take advantage of it, just let me know and we could add it to your account on our end. So happy to help.
Yeah. So I just want to open the floor. We've got a few more minutes. If people want to ask questions, also you can always email me. It's Caitlin, Caitlin at Simplecast. Andy says, will other people's ads play on my show? Not unless you want them there. There's you by using AudioGO, you do not put any ads on your show. If you wanted to put ads on your show, you would use something like Simplecast's May movable audio engine. That would be something that you would have to opt into. There would be no situation in which there would be ads on your show without you wanting them there. Okay. So last call for questions. Again, there's a replay here. I say my email a lot, but I mean it. Please shoot me emails. I'm always happy to help, and I know Ian is as well.
Absolutely. Please do. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it here. Thank you all so much. And I hope you have a good rest of your day and a good rest of your week. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Here we go.